Hey there, Foster Care Nation. This is Jason with Foster Care, an Unparalleled Journey. Recently, I reached out inside of a group that talks a lot about foster care and adoption and asked if there was anyone who wanted to tell their story. There's a story there that needs to be told. It's a story that we don't hear about often, and it's a story that's oftentimes shamed in today's culture. Today we're talking to Lauren. Lauren is a birth mother who knew at a young age that she was not ready to be a parent and chose to give her child a life that she could not give him. What resulted was an open adoption that has become a very healthy place for both her child, and the adoptive parents. She tells her story today. For all the show notes, be sure and go by and check out fostercarenation.com. And if you're looking for ways to support us, you can help us out on Patreon at patreon.com/fostercarenation. Or the most helpful thing you could do is to share this episode with a friend or someone who might be interested. Also, if you're an iTunes user, please go by and leave us a rating and review. It really helps the show get found. Now on to the episode.
Foster care and Unparalleled Journey
With Jason and Amanda Palmer. We like to talk about foster care and adoption and anything related. We tell stories about foster kids, bio kids, adoptive kids. We talk to caseworkers and anybody involved in the foster and adoptive system. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. You can reach us at fosteruj@gmail.com or check us out on our website at fostercarenation.com. Hi, and welcome to Foster Care, an Unparalleled Journey with Jason
and Amanda.
We are here today with Lauren Bujorian. She is an adoptee circa 1988, and it is a pause reunion. She's also a birth mom in an open adoption from 2013 and very active in post-placement support for birth mothers. She works closely with an organization called Caring for Birth Mothers in Akron, Ohio. They host monthly pizza meetups that are their version of support groups and retreats 3 times a year. Their events are all run by birth moms for birth moms. They believe in the power of support, connection, and growth. Her passions definitely light up for the post-placement support and advocating for healthy communication in open adoptions. How are you doing today, Lauren?
I'm doing great. How are you guys doing today?
We are doing wonderful. Well, I don't know if I can speak for Amanda, but
I'm going to say I'm doing good. You know, the whole time change thing always throws me for a loop, but it's a beautiful day out, the sun's shining, and beautiful temperatures for March, so I'm not going to complain.
I agree. We're having great weather today, too. I'm loving the sunshine.
Yeah, it's almost 70 degrees out here. It's absolutely gorgeous. Yesterday was beautiful, too, so it was a great time to have a weekend off.
Yeah, yes. And I don't know when anybody's listening to this, but it is March in Missouri, and so it can be sunny and 70 out my window today, but tomorrow there may be snowflakes.
It's the same way here in Ohio, so definitely, and we're at 60 right now, so I will take it.
Yeah.
No, me and Amanda just wanted to say thanks for taking the time to come talk to us here on the podcast. Mm-hmm. It's people like you who are willing to share your stories that really make this all possible, especially a birth mom. You know, that's one of the things in foster care that I've talked with a lot of people about. It's really easy for people to look and go, well, how could you do that, right? We've seen we do a lot of foster care stories, and we've heard some pretty rough stories for kids who've come through some foster care placements. Some placements that really were in a terrible place, some kids who were in a terrible place that turned them into their becoming a foster care placement in our home. And it's really easy to just automatically assume that if a mom can't get their life together, you know, if they can't this, or they choose drugs over their kid, like all these judgmental statements are the ones that can jump up in your head really fast and easy. And the truth is, because we've seen this, the best thing for any child is to live in a placement where their birth mom and dad are going to take care of them, you know, where they actually know that mom and dad love you. Mm-hmm. And that's an important piece. That's more important. That's bigger and better than anything I can give any kid ever as a foster parent. And I think that's one of the things that it's easy to forget. And it sounds like you're really into that you're really into the world of helping birth moms be part of their kids' lives. And I think that's amazing.
Yeah, definitely.
Have you had any, I'm certain you have. What are your experiences with Well, have you dealt with any foster care placements, or do you primarily deal with post adoptee?
Yeah, so a lot of what I do is strictly the adoption placement. So it's women that choose to place versus children being taken away temporarily or permanently. So my area is more of making that decision from the time of learning you're pregnant to making a plan and considering all your options, things like that. So that's more of where I come from with it. But I have interacted with a few women who had children taken away and then went on to place other children or other pregnancies that they faced. So I do have a lot of connection with women who've experienced either just one or the other or both. But my realm and my personal experience was all, this was a plan that I chose, and I went from the beginning of pretty much the beginning of my pregnancy on until his birth. So for me, it was a choice, but I do know quite a few women that it was not a choice.
Okay. Well, can we ask, what made you see that as the best choice in your life?
Sure. So as we kind of touched on briefly, I am adopted. So adoption has been my life. I have an adopted sibling also. She's about 5 years younger than me. She was an international adoption, so I got to watch that also play out from a young child. She came into our lives about 6 months old. So I got to experience that. And then my own experience with adoption was very positive for the most part. It wasn't without its traumas or hardships, and there were a lot of unanswered questions and things like that. But for the most part, it was a positive experience. So for me, when I faced an unplanned pregnancy, I was in a relationship with someone that for the most part, I was just in it with him because I knew it wasn't a good relationship, which sounds really crazy, but it was one of those, like, I'm testing the waters. I'm trying to see how mad I can make everyone and make them still stay at the same time. And not the best reason to be with anyone, but, I kind of lived a life of risk taking and behaviors like that, which do come from a lot of adoption trauma. But he was abusive. It was an abusive relationship. There was physical, mental situations that took place. When I found out I was pregnant, there was actually some sexual abuse that took place, things like that. And for me, when I found out I was pregnant, it was all about protecting my son from that. Not that he ever hurt any of his other children, but I just didn't want my son or myself to be connected to him for 18 years. I kind of used it as an out of being connected to him. But also, I was still living with my parents. I didn't have a job. I was 25 at the time of my pregnancy. I wasn't financially able to take care of myself. And I knew that there were resources that I could parent and have financial assistance from the government and organizations. But for me, that was just something that I wasn't personally interested in. I wanted my son to have the best possible life. I looked at the life, my parents provided me growing up, and I wanted my son to have something similar. I wanted him to have two parents in a home that loved him. I wanted him to have stability, consistency. And those were all things that I was aware I couldn't provide at that time. I hadn't even gone to college yet. And none of those things make you a good mom. You can be a fantastic mom. And I knew I could have been a good mom. But I wanted him to have more, and I wanted him to have things that I knew I couldn't give him at that moment in time.
Wow, that's pretty self-aware to realize that that's a struggle that you're going to have to face at that age. Because, I don't know about you, but I know when I was 25, I remember that guy. He was kind of an idiot, and he wasn't very self-aware at all.
Yeah, and that's one of those things is, a lot of people that knew me then or knew me post Miles, my son, they all say, like, you are such a different person. And I know 100% it was because of those, really 8 months of serious thinking and serious thought processing that changed me and made me who I am today. So I use it as a launching point for me. I did a complete 180 from where I was, and I said, I will never be that person again. I'm going to be self-sufficient. I'm going to be, a stronger, better person for him, because I want him to see that not only did I give him the best life he could have, at that time, I also bettered my life too, so that it would never happen again. And so it was, I think about it too, because like you said, 25, you just kind of living life and having the best fun you can have. And that's what I was doing. And I realized that wasn't the right path for me anymore, now that I was bringing life into the world.
Yeah, kids have an ability to make a lot of us realize that it's not just about us anymore.
Yes, exactly.
It's that, and that's probably what helped me to mature, because at that point in time we had a couple of young ones, and I was having to turn my life around a little bit from being, the guy who could be young and stupid and had to become a really productive member of society so I could teach my kids, let alone just provide for them, but also to be able to teach them and raise them in a way that was going to be healthy for them.
Right.
So, now you have some bonus kids, you said?
I do, yes. I got married in 2018, and I added to my family that way. I got 3 beautiful kids who are amazing. We have a 7, a 9, and an 11-year-old.
That's not a bad age to be dealing with.
I lucked out. I missed out on a lot of things, but boy, do we have a bumpy ride ahead of us with those teen years coming up. So I'm buckled in, ready to go for it.
I have 3 teenagers in my house right now, and I'll say, yeah, it's a bumpy road. But, I said something once to a friend of mine about having, a daughter who's getting ready to come into her teenage years and being kind of afraid of that. And he kind of challenged me. And I love the fact that he had this to say to me, because it helped me realize it. He said, you can look at it as something to be afraid of. You can look at it as like a bad thing. Now, mind you, this guy has 3 teenage daughters in the house. I think he has 3. 2 or 3, I don't remember. But his response was, you can also look at it as a challenge and an amazing time to connect with kids who don't have parents who typically connect with them at that age. And you can make a huge difference in their life just by looking at it from that angle, as opposed to looking at it from the, oh dear God, here we go place.
Yeah, I like that. I'm going to take that away from this today. Thank you for sharing.
It really is. It's all about mindset, and
yeah,
life in general is about that, but especially when it comes to our kids, because, we have our own setup. Our oldest daughter was, legally speaking, my half sister-in-law. It was Amanda's half sister, whatever that makes her to me. And then she had a son with a previous marriage, and Dad bounced on that one, and so he was raised as mine. And then we had a biological son, and then we have 4 kids below that in age who we have adopted through the foster care system. So we have like a weird family connection, a step, bio, and adoptive. And we've actually just reopened our home to foster care as well. So, we have a lot of different kids in our life, and you have to learn to reshape your mindset around it. Because for me, it comes down to, what? Once you come into my house, you become part of our clan, if you will, our tribe. You're part of the people who I'm going to maybe kill people for, or if we're lucky, I'll just, have to live for you and do all those great things. And it's different to look at it that way than it is to look at it as, oh, we have all these, challenging relationships that we have to navigate, because some of them are challenging. Especially some of the adoptive relationships, because, there's, let me think here. Yeah, all of our adopted kids have bio parents who are still alive. At least some of them are still alive. One of the parents at a minimum. And the thing is that for us, the bio parents are not a safe place for them to be around. Yeah, and mostly because we have a lot of addiction in our family, in our family's family tree, if you will. And if you have a bad heroin habit, I'm probably not going to have you around, because you probably have people like dealers in your life, and I'm not playing with that kind of mess, right? That's dangerous, and so that's a real challenge for us, and figuring out how that fits in. Because even some of our bio kids, not all of them, ask questions about their birth parents. All of them have some curiosity about that connection. And that's a totally unique situation for every family that walks this journey. It sounds like your journey is entirely different, though. That you and your bio son still have that connection, and obviously the adoptive parents see that as a safe place, and so how did you manage to keep that connection open with them? Because that's not always an easy thing to do.
Yeah, it definitely isn't. And I definitely agree with you that there are circumstances that you do need to protect the children. You do need to put them first, 100%. But like you said, our situation is very different. I didn't struggle with addiction. Like this was, 100% plan made by me. So with as far as his parents go, I was able to actually meet them and pick them. So I, was handed a pile of profiles, if you will, and it was like a dating website. Basically, you go on, you read all this information, you see pictures, you get to know them before even communicating with them, and I was just really drawn to them. My mom and my therapist, who I was seeing at the time, actually both looked at the profiles and were like, "Oh, you have to look at this family." And I was kind of in a phase of not really being sure, and I'd picked a family prior and turned down because there was a history of depression. And that just burned me so bad because I was like, if you don't want a child that could possibly be depressed, you shouldn't be adopting, period. So when I met Matt and Melissa, who are his amazing parents, and I okayed sharing their names just to throw that in there, it was like meeting my best friends, even though this was my first time meeting them. So, she and I had both, bonded over just being absolutely terrified. And I actually drove past the restaurant before pulling in, like completely airheaded. I'd been there before. I knew exactly where this place was we were meeting. And I just drove right past it. Like I had no idea where I was going. And she did the same thing. And we were both just laughing about how anxious we were, but also excited. And it was just an instant bonding moment for the both of us. That I just knew, like as soon as I met them and after answering about 5 or 6 questions, that she was who I wanted to raise my son. And same with him, like they were just perfect. My mom was with me that day and said, "It's so funny how much Melissa reminds me of you if you just kind of had your stuff together right now. Like if you had maybe just been a little more stable, she has these love for children that you have." And so it just, this instant connection. And a lot of birth moms I talk about that, where it just clicks. You just know this was the right person to raise my child. And so just having that instant, I guess, chemistry and relationship connection really helped us just keep in touch. So the agency that I placed with does what they call semi-open, and where you get pictures and letters for the first year once a month. So they would send a bunch of pictures and letters for that first year. And then after that, you would get 2 letters and 2 sets of pictures a year. And the family would kind of decide when you got that, and the agency would be the ones that would send it to you. So it was very informal, or very formal rather. It was very formal how they would send it to us. Like we weren't allowed to ever have direct contact. And after a while, Melissa and I were just like, this doesn't feel right. And we started directly messaging each other. It was actually in the hospital after I delivered that we exchanged cell phone numbers. She created a Facebook profile where she would post pictures. It was separate from hers because she wasn't quite sure yet. And I understood and I respected that. It could be scary to add me. You never know. If you watch Lifetime, there's all those scary perceptions of birth moms out there that we're going to steal the babies or, try to steal your husbands, and no interest there at all. But everyone has these fears and I understand it, but I also think it's crazy. But I respected her desire for a little anonymity, except we both knew each other's full names. We both knew where we lived. It was just a little shelter until we were ready to dive deeper. And so now, we talk all the time. I was actually just texting her right before I called in to you guys today. And she's so excited. She can't wait to hear it. And she was so excited about the picture I picked. She said it's actually her favorite picture of Miles and I. So yeah, we just clicked. We became, a weird version of best friends that most people are like, I don't understand, but that's okay. You don't have to. It works. It works for us.
Well, that's really amazing that they have that set up, because, I don't watch Lifetime, but but my dad was a police officer for 20-something years, and I know that the world is full of crazy people, and I can see that fear being there. You know, you never know when somebody's gonna step off into a drug addiction that goes off the rails.
Yeah. Or, just anything, just a mental health breakdown, even.
I was going to say
anything
mental
is
health
anything
issues
is possible.
and all that.
Yeah, so I can see that kind of semi-open shelter being a safe place to be able to and the separation between where the agency is the one who communicates to you and to her, and being kind of the middle person for that. That's that's probably a really good thing to start with. But it's awesome to see that you guys have been able to keep an open connection over the years. Because how old is he now?
He is 6, so he will be 7 this year. Yeah.
Okay, so you guys have been doing this for quite a few years, and it sounds like it's really worked out. So that's an amazing opportunity for a kid to be able to hold on to that birth connection, without any issue from with the bio parents as well, because I know that can be an issue. Like I said before, we've dealt with some of that. We've more than a couple of our kids have bio parents who have addiction issues. And I just, we've dealt with addiction issues in our own families enough to know that it's safest to keep some space there. So I can see that being something that people are a little bit nervous about. But the fact that you guys have been able to hold on to this for 6 years and keep this going, that's amazing, because I'm sure your son knows that you love him.
Yes. And that's one thing that, he was actually the ring bearer in my wedding. Like, he was involved in all of that. He's had play dates with my bonus kids. He knows my husband. And it's actually really funny. He gets more excited to see my husband than me sometimes. And so that was like, oh man, like, I'm not the favorite anymore. But even when he was 3, he had a really firm grasp on who I was. We were actually at a fundraiser for a not-for-profit that supports our pizza meetups and our retreats for birth moms. And he came, and, they kind of always make little cameo appearances at those types of things. But he had this whole little speech prepared for me. And he said, Mama Lauren, I love you, and I know why you're special. And I said, oh, well, why am I special, buddy? He goes, because I grew in your belly. And for him to say that at 3 and actually seem to understand what he was saying, threw me for a loop. Like, I was sobbing. I was so excited. I just hugged him, and it was so cute. But it's now I know 100% that they are sharing my truth with him. They're not hiding things from him. It even got to a point where, because he knew he grew in my belly, he knew that he wanted brothers and sisters. So he'll kind of hint sometimes, like, hey, I want a brother. And I just laugh and I say, it's not coming from me, buddy. But so it's just this funny little thing. Like, he gets it. He understands that, we have this connection in his own little 6-year-old brain. So it's really cool to watch that and know that his parents are kind of fostering that idea that I'm a good person, that I love him, that it's okay for him to love me. And, that there's not this weird, you can't love her, you have to love us kind of dynamic going on. It's really cool that they are so positive about it also.
Now, how has your family, taken to this whole idea? Is it something that they struggled with at first, or have they been pretty supportive throughout it?
My parents were very supportive. My parents told me from the beginning that no matter what I chose, they would be understanding and they would be there for me. It kind of was expressed that if I chose to parent, my parents wouldn't parent my child, like, you see a lot of. And I said, okay, I understood my parents work full-time jobs. I couldn't expect them to babysit all the time. That isn't realistic. But they were very honest with me that, they were a little disappointed that I had allowed this to happen. I kind of got a little bit of silent treatment while my parents figured it all out about me being pregnant and still being at home. And just for a little background, I do come from a very strong Christian home, and I was the rebellious child always. You name a rule, I figured out how to break it. That was just who I was. So this was just me being me, basically. And my parents were like, okay, this is the ultimate rule break here. Um, but they, they were very loving about it. My mom, like I said, came with me to meet Matt and Melissa, my son's parents. She was there with me when I filled out the ridiculous 15-page health document, and, background information of, here's every disease or, illness that I've ever had, basically, like, and, all that health information as far that I could provide, being adopted. I didn't know much at the time. So, yeah, she was very much so a part of the process with me. Both parents came to the hospital when I had him and said goodbye and, held him and loved on him. And they've come to a few visits. They're very excited that we had such a good relationship. But I think also it was interesting to watch them kind of open up to open adoption, because I had been a closed adoption. They didn't know anything about my birth family. They couldn't answer any questions. And now they see my son getting answers to every question as soon as it pops up. So I think it was interesting. My dad actually pulled me aside. He goes, I think this is beautiful for you guys. He's like, but if your birth mom had come knocking around asking for information or asking for pictures, I don't know if I could have shared it, because we didn't know who she was or what her story is. And I thought that was really interesting that, he thought it was okay for me and my situation now, but like that kind of disconnect for him. And I think it's just my dad being my protector. He's always been, fiercely protective of his girls. And it was interesting to watch that play out and see him even stop to think about, could I have done that? I don't know.
That is one thing about us dads is part of the way we are hardwired, that we're protectors.
Yeah.
And that's just who we are. Our two middle kids, I call them middle kids. Our kids were kind of born in stages. But our 12 and 14-year-old, their biological father was murdered when they were very young. But his best friend he went through high school with and played ball with and all that, they actually have a son the same age as our son, and he's in his grade in the same school.
Playing the same sports.
Yep. And
he's actually the coach for our son.
Yep. And then him and his wife now have another little boy who's like best buds in the world with our little kindergartner. And we always hear the stories about Delandon whenever we get him home from school. And they have that connection, so they're able to tell, to fill in some of those gaps, I guess, if you will. Because, they went to school together. They knew each other fairly well.
Yeah.
I think they got, their birth parents got into some stuff after high school that they kind of had a little bit of distance there, and they weren't so close during that time frame, I don't think. But it allows them to have some of those answers. And, to this last year when our son played football, he played 8th grade football. He played on the same team his dad played for. He wore the same jersey number because we knew somebody who could tell him, yeah, your dad wore number 22. So he was number 22 on the football team, was able to do all that and have a lot of those questions answered. There's still, in our situation, there's still quite a few questions that aren't answered for them, but it allows them to have some of those pieces. So I think that's amazing that you're able to fill in those gaps for your son that a lot of kids don't get. I would imagine a lot of those gaps that you experienced as a kid, there's a lot of trauma based around that for a lot of kids. And I mean, I don't know about your personal experience, but I do know that, from what we've seen, there's a lot of trauma that can come out of that.
Yeah, I definitely have some of the trauma kind of triggers that you see with a lot of adoptees, even though I did have a brief lived current reunion. I got a few questions answered, like the who and the why and the what, and I got to see who I look like. I got to put, oh, I have your eyes, I have your nose, and I got names and things like that. And those were all things I longed for, but I didn't get deeper connection as of right now. And, that's something that was hard, and is still hard. As a kid, my birthdays were probably the hardest for me. And I would just remember as soon as everyone would start singing to me, I would cry or I'd hide under the table. And it was just almost overwhelming. But then at the same time, I loved being the center of attention any other day. So it was one of those things where it was like, okay, this is clearly some kind of trauma manifesting around the birthday, because I know that there's some other person that I hope is thinking about me this day. and I have all these questions that I want to ask, but I can't. But my parents always encouraged me to love my birth mom without knowing anything. They told me what they could, that she was young. I believe they said around 18, 19. They knew that she was young and not capable of being a mom at this time. So they tried the best they could with the teeny tiny little bit of information. But, I saw it get hard for my mom too, because she would always try to tell me like, honey, I just don't know, but we want you to know. And, she encouraged me to search for my mom when I was ready and form a relationship with her. Like I remember at one point during that reunion, it was actually Mother's Day, and I got invited over for a Mother's Day brunch. And I looked at my mom and I said, "Are you okay if I go over there on Mother's Day?" And my mom just grabbed my face and kissed my forehead and said, "I have had 26 Mother's Days with you. She can have this one." And just hearing my mom validate that and say, "Go, reunite, form bonds," like, again, broke down sobbing. I do that a lot. But it was just such a powerful moment to know my parents were still encouraging this and still wanting me to get all these answers that kind of helped a lot of healing start to take place, for sure.
Well, that's beautiful, because a lot of kids will never have that.
Yeah.
And the fact that your adoptive parents are willing to see that as an open option is not always easy for people to do. So their
definitely.
willingness is amazing.
I definitely have a lot of great people in my corner. I'll say that much. So
it sounds like it. And now, I know you've mentioned being part of this the group. What's the name of the group of with the birth moms?
Oh, yeah. So I'm part of Caring for Birth Mothers. We are in Akron, Ohio. It's connected to an adoption agency, but we are kind of our own separate entity. So we do support groups. We call them pizza meetups once a month. We do them in the Akron area and then every other month down in Columbus. And then we've started to do a few in Youngstown. So we're kind of spreading out across the state as we gain interest and attendance. We talk about the hard stuff for birth moms. We have some generous donors that make it possible for us to, enjoy pizza and feed everyone for free who comes. And we just talk about, we do tribe stuff together. We're a sisterhood of women who made this choice, and we're all connected by this common grief decision that we all made. And we all grow together. We share our lives together. Sometimes the pizza meetups are just full of laughter and life updates, and other times they're full of, hard questions and talking about grief management and talking about the struggles we're facing or really hard birthdays and things like that. Like it covers all kinds of areas of conversation, which I love. You never know what you're going to get. It all depends on the mix of people that show up that week. And we also do retreats 3 times a year. We rent out lodges and cabins, and we meet up. We do one in spring, summer, and fall. And we spend a whole weekend together. Our whole team is made up of birth moms. We actually have a birth mom who experienced foster care placement and some addiction struggles herself. We have a birth mom who placed right around the time I was placed for adoption. We have another birth mom who has a super, super open adoption to the point she travels to the state and stays in their home for almost a week at a time. And her daughter knows her, and it's amazing. And then we have another adoptee birth mom like myself who was an international adoptee and placed within her familial group that adopted her. And, we just kind of cover all the places that a birth mom could come from in our little facilitator team. And it's really awesome to see the aha moments when, first time birth moms attend our groups and see, oh, you went through that too, or, oh, you were in an abusive relation, like all those connection moments that help them feel closer to us. And the stories have similarities other than just we all placed a child for adoption. So it's really cool. It's where my passion is right now. I absolutely love the work we do, the growth I've seen in the women over the 6 years that I've been involved, plus my own personal growth from it. I might be a facilitator, but I learn and I take away just as much as these moms do that come in for the very first time. So it's very therapeutic to get to do it 3 times a year.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I know you talked about the grief and the trauma there. What kind of advice would you give somebody? Because there's probably a potential birth mom out there right now listening and thinking about it. What kind of advice would you give them as far as how to deal with it if they choose to have their child placed?
Yeah. So first of all, you have options. You have so many options. Don't let anyone make the decision for you. That's my number one thing when I speak with expectant mothers is make this decision for you. Don't feel pressured by anyone. Definitely advocate for yourself. Learn about all the different types of adoption that exist. Semi-open worked for me at the beginning, and then we went to full-blown open. But that doesn't always work for everybody. So definitely educate yourself and do that first and foremost while you're learning of your options. But definitely just be prepared because it can come out of nowhere. Like for me, my son's going to be 7 this year, but actually today was the day 7 years ago that I finally decided adoption was the right decision. And it was funny because that popped up on my Facebook memories while I was coming in and looking at the questions for today. And I was just like, wow, normally today is a pretty hard day for me, but I'm feeling okay. And then out of nowhere, you get a little tearful. And it's just, you got to be ready for anything because it comes out of nowhere. Make sure you have a great support system. If you don't have one now, reach out. We have a Facebook page. We have a Facebook group just for birth moms. There's a few amazing groups that are there to educate expectant mothers on adoption and what it's like. And then I know some pretty great people that are counselors as well that would, inform you of all of your rights and abilities and things of that nature. So definitely build a support system, educate yourself, and never give up. Never give up, because I'm a firm believer in you grow through what you go through. It was funny. We were in our group chat just today. We were sharing T-shirts and stuff we might want to make for our next retreat, and that was one of them. You grow through what you go through, and this can be a launching point for you. And as long as you don't sit and dwell in the sadness and you don't let the grief and the depression swallow you whole, you can come out of it and be on the other side and have a life that you've always dreamed of. This doesn't have to be the ending point, because it does kind of look like the end of the road for many women who are facing this. I know, because I've been there, and it doesn't have to be the end if you don't let it.
That's amazing advice. And I'll make sure that the show notes will have links to all those groups on your Facebook and your Instagram and your website, so that people can reach out if they need to, because that's a challenging decision that I don't know that I would know how to walk through. And I can't imagine, especially being as young as you were, to be able to make those decisions and not end up second guessing yourself at least 100,000 times.
Yeah. And I think it is. It's totally normal to feel set on it one day and then completely question it the next day. And, even with the amazing relationship I have with my son and his parents, and I see how happy he is being a little world traveler and, having a passport, all these things, it's like, I still wonder, well, what if I made a different decision? And that you can't help but think that way. I think it's just human nature. So for me, it's just not allowing those thoughts to consume me. I allow them to happen because it's a thought and I can't just deny my thoughts. And then I remind myself that if I had done that, would I have been in the place I was when I met my husband, that he would have wanted to marry me? And I think about all these things of like how my life trajected and moved forward, that would all of that happen had I parented? And obviously, had I parented, I wouldn't be connected with this amazing group doing the amazing work we're doing. So I wouldn't be making the impact and helping the women that I've helped. So I kind of look at it as a catch-22. Like, sure, I could have had my son and I could have been without all of this sadness and frustration and grief in the beginning of grieving that act of parenting, but I might not be where I am today. I would 100% wouldn't be where I am today had I not made that decision. So I think it's absolutely absolutely natural to not only question it before, but also after.
You know, it's amazing you say that because, you know, part of our story, we lost our oldest daughter a few years ago to a nasty disease. And as horrible as that experience was, honestly, this podcast would not exist if I hadn't been through that. And, you know, we're out there trying to reach and touch all these different people based on foster care, adoption, all the different sides of it, and talk to people who can have amazing stories or where they can give advice to people like you. And none of that would have been possible if we hadn't been through the road that we walked. And would we have chosen one over the other? Obviously not. But we didn't get to choose that.
Right.
You know, disease chooses who it chooses, and we don't get to choose that. But what we can do is take the situation that you're dealt in life and turn it into something beautiful, if at all possible.
Absolutely. I 100% believe that. You choose the cards. Like, you're dealt a hand, but you choose what cards you play. It's all about how you come out of it on the other end and make something out of it, for sure.
You are 100% correct there. That's one of the things that we have found in our journey is that it's really about what you choose to do with the hand you're dealt, not about what hand you're dealt, because you don't get to choose that one. You know, and
Definitely.
you know, there's an old song that I always love to quote. I think it was by a band named Van Zandt, and the line in the song is, "If you want to hear God laugh, just tell him your plans."
That is a great song.
And no matter what you think it's going to be in your life, you know, for me, my wife and I was going to be 41 when our oldest boy turned 18. We were going to give him the big boot, and we were going to be empty nesters and be able to do whatever we wanted, and all of our money would go to the things we wanted to spend it on. And, you know, and I'm 42 now, and my youngest is 4. So that changed, you know, but,
Yeah.
you know, I didn't get that idea that I thought I was going to have, but I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world either.
Right. I
You
love
know?
that.
Yeah, that's the beauty of life, I think. Sometimes it's just understanding how not to be so attached to the result that you want that you're willing to completely ignore the amazing things that can be in your life. It sounds like you have really found that with your passion for birth moms and connecting birth moms and kids and adoptive parents and being able to create that connection through your group. So I want to just encourage you and tell you that's an amazing thing you've done to realize that, hey, this is something that can be beautiful, and it worked that way for me, and I'm going to try and help others. What made you decide that you could help others that way? Because most of us have these great ideas. We have about 20 of them a day at least.
Yeah.
And we
And then you don't act.
Yeah, and then you decide.
Don't do nothing.
Yeah, that it's not going to happen. That's a dumb idea. I shouldn't do that. That would never work. And I wish I could remember her name. I was listening to a TED talk the other day, and the presenter said that there's this 5-second rule. If you have this idea and you don't take some positive action within 5 seconds, it's gone, and you're not going to do anything about it. So when you have that idea, sit down and write it down, do something, make a phone call, talk to somebody. My wife had one of those recently where she called me. She said, okay, this idea is going to seem silly to me in a short time, so I'm going to tell you about it so that you can kind of hold me accountable. You can push me on this. And that's something that we have been chasing, you know, but that's a huge piece of being able to create something in this world is being willing to accept the fact that you can go do something amazing. You can make a difference in the world, not just in your small corner, but that little difference you make in somebody else's life in Akron, Ohio, 20 years from now, that parent, that kid, they're going to be somewhere else in the world, and they're going to have kids.
Yeah.
And you're going to spread that across the nation. And so those little pieces that you can do today can change the entire world tomorrow. And having the courage to stand up and do that had to be a difficult thing, but I'm glad you did.
Yeah. So I got real lucky in the respect that this organization actually existed before I got involved. They'd actually done one retreat prior to me attending. And while I was there, I expressed interest in either, joining their team or wanting to start something like this myself. And they actually called me on my way home from the first retreat that I attended and said, "Do you want to join our team?" And I said, "Yes." So I just jumped on it. I didn't know what joining the team entailed. I didn't know what they would want from me. I just said yes, and I took that leap. And I'm forever thankful that Lori and Caroline asked me, who started this themselves, because the agency that actually we spawned from saw the importance of post-placement support and knew that this was something that needed to be started. So they encouraged Lori and Caroline to start it. And then they asked me to join, and then we've branched out and added 2 other facilitators. So there's a total of, 5 of us now. And it's pretty crazy to watch us grow. We've had birth moms come from across the country. We've had one fly in from Oregon, from Utah, from Florida. We have, all over the country just come in and attend these retreats. And it almost breaks my heart that they have to travel so far to get the kind of support that they get. But at the same time, I'm glad they are, because they're getting to hear it from birth moms in a event that's facilitated for them by us, because we know how important it is and how sacred it is to have this tribal connection of women who get it and to spend that whole weekend together. So I got lucky in the respect that all that hard work and that groundbreaking was already done. I didn't have to start off with, figuring it out and finding money. It was already established, and I came in at the right time and got to be a part of it and ride the waves ever since. I'm real thankful for that phone call and that leap of faith where I said yes, because it has definitely become something that I am very passionate about and happy to be a part of, and wish I could do every day. I wish I could talk about what we do every day, given the chance. But maybe one day.
There you go. I'm sitting here thinking, and this sounds like the type of organization that's been set up and well run enough that maybe somebody listening will want to spawn an organization off of this in their area. I'm assuming they could connect with you guys and talk about that if that's something that was on their heart.
Yeah. We have a lot, because we are an Akron, Ohio organization. Our support groups are obviously, as I said, Akron, Clements, and Youngstown. And we advertise them on our Facebook page, and we talk about the events and, invite anyone who wants to come. But we hear that a lot of moms saying, "I wish I could start something like this. I wish I could do this." And it's definitely something we're willing to share of how we started and, give advice on, what we did to get started, or rather what Lori and Caroline did to get started. And it's definitely something that we think we would like to do. But, it's all about those financial circumstances and things like that, where you just kind of have to take what you can get for the time being and then grow when you can. So, it's something we would love to do. I think I could speak for most of us that we would love to do it more often. And maybe the more introverted ladies in our facilitator group would feel like freeze enough. But I definitely think that we all agree there needs to be more, whether it's us leading it or other people leading it. We definitely think that there should be more support out there.
Well, I think that's a great goal for not only you guys, but somebody else out there listening who maybe doesn't have the ability to fly out from Utah, who could find some of that, whether you're in Utah or Arizona, anywhere in the world, that's the sort of thing. And, podcasts, one of the interesting things I've learned, because we have some interesting analytics that pop up. I mean, they're worldwide. Like, we have listens in Morocco. And I don't know anybody in Morocco. But but Facebook reaches to Morocco and back. And so, anywhere around the world, this might be the sort of thing that they could at least talk to you guys and figure out, what the mechanics of building a group like this is, and how to contact people who might be interested in it, because this is a huge thing for kids, because like I said before, that number one thing is knowing that your birth parents loved you and cared for you.
Yes.
And if you can create that inside of an adoption, my God, I don't know if there's anything much more beautiful than handing a family to a child and allowing them to know that where they came from may have been something that a birth mom couldn't handle on their own. There was a reason why she couldn't take care of it at the time, but she's still willing to be part of that family, and she still loves her child. and she still wants to see them and wants to build that relationship. And that's a huge benefit for every kid who's been in an adoption.
Yeah. Can I just say that I love that you put it as handing a family to a child, because so many times you hear handing the baby to a family, and that's not what we do. We are picking families for our children. And I got goosebumps when you said that, because I was like, yes.
Well, I would love to take credit for that, but there's a podcast episode that should be coming out real soon with a guy by the name of Sean Hutchins.
Okay.
He and his wife were the adoptive family in an adoption, and they went through an adoption agency, and that was one of the things that he talks about. Is the idea is not that they were out there shopping for a baby to take or anything like that. The picture in his mind was that, hey, we're giving our family to a child, and that's really what it is.
Yeah.
At least if it's done right, it is.
Yes. If it's done right, if it's done ethically and with good agencies and good organizations, 100%.
Yeah, that's what we're looking for, and I'll give Sean credit for having said that and changing my vocabulary a little bit, because it's such a powerful way to change that in your mind and be able to, because I know that I've been on Facebook, I've looked around a lot of groups, and there's a lot of people who were adopted as children who have a very negative view of it, because let's just face it, in 1980 something, there wasn't great checks out there. It wasn't, you weren't able to get online and in 30 seconds know where every child offender in the county, sex offender in the county was. And a lot of kids got placed in places they shouldn't have been placed. And a lot of kids were hurt in that process. And so it's great now that a lot of that is there, and we're able to be a lot more cautious about that and be able to take these kids and give them a family that will raise them, that will love them, that will give them what they need to get through life and be successful. Because, at the end of the day, those kids are the ones who are going to be making decisions about our health care, either as a child or as politicians or as the people who vote. We want those kids to be raised and have a great childhood and have great experiences and be able to take care of us in our old age. I keep telling my kids, one of you guys has got to make a lot of money so you can afford to put me in a good nursing home, because
Retirement castle.
That's it.
Castle.
Yeah. So far, I don't think we've gotten there yet, but we're holding out.
We're working on it.
There you go.
But no, it's great for you to come on here and tell us your story and let us talk to you a bit about the importance of birth moms in a kid's life after adoption, because that is such a powerful piece, and what you guys have done is just an uncommon thing. And
one thing I really love too, just to give a quick analogy if I can, Lori, she's a social worker at the agency, and then she's also a birth parent herself. And she works closely with expectant mothers. One thing she always stresses is, a child is growing up, and, you're their parents, and you're adoptive parents or biological parents, and you give them their puzzle pieces. And something that happens with adoption is a child is given half a puzzle, because they're being raised by these people that are their parents, but they don't have those biological pieces. And to deny an adopted child access to those birth parents is to deny them puzzle pieces to finish their puzzle. And that totally changed my perspective also, because I never viewed it that way, that I was a child who grew up in a family that I fit in pretty well with, but wasn't my biological family. So until I reunited, I was missing so many little puzzle pieces to finish that picture, because I had all these what if thoughts of, my conception and things like that. Like, how did I even come to be? Like, those basic questions, or who do I even look like? Things like that I think biological children often take for granted. They don't stop to think, oh gosh, who do I look like when I look in the mirror? Like, they just know, oh, I have my dad's ears and my mom's eyes and grandpa's toes. But for adoptees, we don't know those things unless we have the access. So for me, didn't know any of that. So that's, a bunch of puzzle pieces that are missing. But my son, because of that connection we have, he gets a full box of puzzle pieces completely ready to go when it's time for him to start building that puzzle. And it's such a great analogy to look at it that way, in my opinion, because it just helps create well-rounded children who then create well-rounded adults.
Absolutely. Because, you know, that's one of the things I always say is these kids are going to be dealt with somewhere along the lines. And whether they don't find the way to put their puzzle pieces together and they're not able to be helped by a family, if they're not able to be helped by a teacher, sooner or later somebody's going to help them understand the world in a very real way. And if that's law enforcement, that's not a great way. And unfortunately, a lot of kids who come through foster care and adoption, the rate of incarceration is ridiculously through the roof. And being able to hand those pieces to your kid is probably a huge part of what allows them to build that identity and move through that age range, because the teen years are tough, and that's a lot of the teen years. And, you're handing those pieces to a kid so he doesn't have to, your son doesn't have to go through that trauma.
Yeah. That's the hope. I think there will be still little bits of trauma, even with, such a perfect open adoption. But I hope that because of the relationship we've built, we'll be able to ride those waves that come up and help him process it faster than someone like me who didn't have access when those trauma waves kind of sent me spiraling. So I think that there's always going to be trauma in adoption, no matter what we do. But I think it's all about how we create safe spaces for the children to know that it's safe to talk about these big feelings that they're going through. And it's all about kind of breaking the stigma of mental health and things like that. Like there's still work to be done for sure. But I think it's definitely getting a lot better.
Yeah, because I don't care what anybody tells you, raising kids doesn't stop at 18.
Yep.
I kind of hope that would be the case, but, our oldest son right now is 21, and there's pieces of that it's just your job until you die. And that's an awesome part of parenthood, because at that point you get to really speak into their lives in different ways. But having had that childhood with your son, that'll give you that ability to speak into his life the whole time, and he will be able to pick up those pieces along the way.
Right.
So, well, Lauren, I really appreciate you coming on here today and sharing your story. Do you have any parting advice or any wisdom that you would give to people who are involved in adoption, or who might be pre-adoptive or post-adoptive? Well, do you have any wisdom that you would give them? Because it sounds like you've run the full gamut of experiences.
I have one kind of hot button topic that I think I would like to leave as my last little seed of wisdom, if I can. But I touched on the grief that a birth parent feels with placing a child, and that it's a lifelong burden that we will often carry. And a lot of hopeful adoptive parents don't always see that or recognize it. And so, they see it as, for however long that they've been waiting for a child, they're grieving this inability to parent and this lack of a child in their home. And while that's a real grief, and I do not by any means want to take away from that, that goes away the minute they're handed a child and, have the ability to parent, and they've been picked as the family for this child. But from there, it transfers to the birth parent. So then for the next 18 years or however long, they're the ones grieving. And you're getting to have this wonderful moment of parenting and all the ups and downs, witnessing the first words, witnessing the first scraped up knee and kindergarten, and all those amazing moments that a lot of parents take for granted. And the birth parents are getting to learn about it secondhand. Or if they're lucky, like me and some others, we get to experience some of those moments. And, or like I said, secondhand through pictures or letters or stories that they're told after the fact. And even myself, with this amazing open adoption that I've shared and talked about, I still find myself sometimes walking on eggshells around my son's parents, because I don't want to ever say or do anything that could rock the boat or cause them to choose to cut off communication. Even though I've been reassured a million times that I could never do anything for them to cut me off, I still have this underlying fear that any day they could just cut me out of my son's life. And while they've never hinted that that's something they would do, it's a fear, and it's there. And every birth mom I talk to talks about having this, even if it's just an underlying fear that bubbles up every once in a while, it is there and it is real. And the only thing I can view it as is grief transfer. So that grief transfer from the adoptive parents of no one's ever going to pick us, we're never going to be able to parent a child, then gets placed on us the minute we place our child into your home, and becomes, I'm going to get cut off. They're never going to talk to me again. My child's never going to want anything to do with me. And so for that year or 2 years or 6 months that they were waiting for a child, and they're going through that turmoil, we now have to carry that until the child is old enough to decide and kind of make decisions on their own. So usually 18 or 21, depending on state laws, where they can search out and contact. It's something that's very real, and I don't think adoptive parents recognize it enough, or hopeful adoptive parents recognize that even if you have this picture perfect adoption and this amazing contact, it's still something that we carry with us very much. And it's not something that's talked about enough, in my opinion, that isn't recognized enough, that we're constantly kind of holding our breath and just praying that nothing gets taken away from us, because you guys are getting all the glory in parenting our children, and we're kind of like the backseat passenger, like, oh yeah, I'm the birth mom and I gave birth, and it's great, but at the same time it's not so great. So definitely just validating feelings and recognizing that adoption carries a lot of feelings for everyone involved: adoptive parents, adoptees, and birth parents. And we just need to create more safe spaces to talk about it, and more open communication and recognition of feelings, for sure.
Well, that's a great piece of advice, because it's something that you're right. It's not talked about a lot, and it's not, a lot of people don't think that side of it through.
Mm-hmm.
And so it sounds like what you and the group you're involved with are doing are just amazing things. And
Mm-hmm.
so, I want to just commend you for walking the path you've walked, and for sharing your story in a way that can hopefully impact all kinds of people. This is a story that people can take with them and learn about it. And if they are considering becoming adoptive parents, to maybe change the idea and the stigmatism
Mm-hmm.
around open adoption.
Yeah. I think, knowing your situation where you said there was addiction and stuff like that, like it's a very real thing to be fearful of, but it's also something too that we need to recognize people have the ability to turn their lives around. So I think that there's a fine line between protecting our children, but also recognizing when someone has changed and welcoming them when that change has occurred. Because I know quite a few birth moms that have struggled with addiction and things like that are denied access to their children, even though they're completely sober now and living amazing lives that I would have no problem letting them come watch if I were to have a child down the line, my future children. And it breaks my heart to see that, 1 or 2 mistakes can prevent access to something that could be so beautiful, not just for the birth parent, but also the adoptive parent and the child, because learning about the birth parent can help you parent the child a little better too, because you can understand, oh, he's acting this way because, oh, look, Susie, the birth mom, did this when she was 12 too. And it's those puzzle pieces. So I definitely think that I understand there are times and circumstances that open adoption isn't the right option for everyone, and there needs to be a level of protection and a level of maybe formal communication that's done through third parties. But I also think that there needs to be realistic check-ins that take place to see when or if that could be changed or modified based on life improvements or decision improvements. But yeah, I wish more people were more open to open adoption. I definitely think it's where we're going as far as a community goes in adoption. I definitely think we're headed that way, where it's more and more common. But I definitely wish it was the only option. And at least some kind of communication could be had, because I think it would do wonders for kids myself.
And that's what it's all about, is taking care of the kids. So
definitely.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming on here and telling your story, and your advice is phenomenal for people who are listening who might be interested in adoption or even foster care as well, because, you know, short of, you know, we've had some situations where, like, there were things put in place by the judge that said 0 contact.
Yes.
You know, and that's for the kid's safety again.
Absolutely. Yes.
So, yeah, and that usually has changed once a birth mom has decided to put down the crack pipe, if you will. You know, once they've decided that whatever it is, their drug of choice is not as important as their kids, and they put aside their problems. And, you know, once you've done that, that's an amazing piece for a kid. I love the analogy of puzzle pieces. That's
it's a good one.
We want to thank Lauren for being willing to come on our show and tell her story and help educate people about the importance of biofamilies inside of the adoption world. For all the links to the groups she's mentioned and all the things she's doing, be sure and check out her show notes over at fostercarenation.com. If you go to the podcast notes tab, click on that, and you can scroll down to her episode. Be sure and check out the rest of the page while you're there, and if you feel so inclined to run over to patreon.com and shoot us a little bit of support, we would appreciate it. Every small amount really helps. But like I mentioned at the beginning of the show, the best thing you can do to help support us is to offer us a rating and review as an iTunes listener, and share this episode with your friends or anyone who you think might be interested in foster care or adoption. And if you'd like to be highlighted as a guest on one of our episodes, please reach out to me, send me an email at fostercareuj@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. And as always,